Ruth, thank you so much for doing this for us. Could we start just by you introducing yourself, a little bit about your journey in audiology, and set the scene a little bit for us?
Sure. So my name's Ruth Bannister. I'm a senior paediatric audiologist and liaison officer, and I work for the NHS in Kent. I had an unusual way into audiology. So about 13 years ago, I became a newborn hearing screener. And then there was a maternity cover for audiology assistant. So I jumped at the chance to move on in audiology and find out a bit more. And then they kind of left. So I then went on to do my degree. I did a foundation degree at Anglia Ruskin, and then went on to do a top up of BSc. And then I went on to be an audiologist, and then I've progressed on to a senior paediatric audiologist. My role is also a little bit different in the sense that I'm a liaison officer. So I work with lots of different departments, multidisciplinary, looking at a holistic care for a child that we share. So I work with speech and language, teachers of the deaf, deaf mental health team, attend Chiswig meetings, lots of different things in lots of different pies, but it means that the child gets every angle looked at. I support families with complex needs children, those on the cochlear implant pathway, lots of different areas. So my job's quite varied, but yeah, a really unusual way of coming into audiology, and not till later in life.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about an experience that you had that you think has shaped the way that you communicate today?
Sure. So when you asked me this question, I was kind of trying to work out, and there's been lots of things that I've learned from my mistakes, definitely, and looking back and how I've changed since then. But one that really sticks with me and has helped how I deal with patients and communicate with patients is a young girl who's just a sort of teenager, early teenager, and she has a high frequency hearing loss with bilateral hearing aids, and she has autism, and she hates her hearing aids but desperately needs them and won't wear them. Mum and dad, it's quite difficult. Mum and dad are divorced. Dad's quite a powerful force, and mum's quite gentle and sort of cotton wool to the child, sort of, very protective. So they're very different approaches, and every time she comes to us, we say the same things to her. You have to wear your hearing aids. Why don't you like your hearing aids? Why don't you want to wear them? We try and counsel her. The best way to do it is to keep them in, all the usual things, try and explain the audiogram. And she just sits and cries and gets really upset and doesn't explain why. She just doesn't like. That's all she says, doesn't like, is her words. And so I decided that instead of it being my communication and what I'm saying, I needed to find a way how she could express what she could say to me, because she couldn't find the words, but I knew she wasn't happy. So I'd been on the NDCS Healthy Minds course, and I figured, when I talked to the girl, I said to her, what do you like outside of school? What do you like at home? And she liked acting, and she liked drawing and lots of artwork and stuff. So I got pen and paper out the cupboard and said, draw me how you feel when you're wearing your hearing aids. And she drew quite a small head, big ears, a sad face with lots of tears. And I said, is it? And then she put these really big hearing aids on the side of her head as well. And I looked at it and I said, is it because it makes you different? Is this what you see? You see yourself as big ears because they've got these hearing aids on. And she started to nod. So I said to her, how does it feel now we've got a new mould? Because her moulds were uncomfortable. And she said, she sort of did another face, but with no tears, but still a sad face and big ears and hearing aids. Mm-hmm. So we decided that we would try one hearing aid, see how she got on with that, because at this stage she was missing out on some of her speech and language at school. Mm-hmm. She's at secondary school. She really needed to be at least trying. And we got one hearing aid in her, and I said, how do you feel about trialling that for 2 weeks? So she did me another face, and then the smile became a flat line and the ears became smaller in that sense. I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere with this. And then instead of leaving her until her next review, which would have been sort of maybe 6 months or a year because of her age, I did teleconsultations with her and her mum, and that worked really well. In between, and then when she came to see me again the next time, we put both hearing aids in, but we did acclimatization on the hearing aids. So I said to her, they're not going to be the full amount of what you need, but we can work our way towards that. How does that make you feel? And again, pen and paper, and she drew me a face that was smiling, no tears, and the ears were still slightly bigger than what you would expect them to be, but there was no tears, and the smile was on there now. And again, in between the next lots of calls, lots of reviews, phoned and saw how she was getting on, and she was doing really well, and she'd actually joined the drama club at school because she could hear what the teachers were saying from the stage to the front, so she was able to actually join in more. and touch wood, still wearing hearing aids nearly 2 years down the line. So, and that to me just made me think, actually, there's more than one way to do this. We don't have to always do the full conversation. We don't have to always explain everything. And we have to treat the patient, not the audiogram. And that is definitely my ethos. I always think about how the patient's hearing, how the patient's, coping, and what affects their life, rather than, well, that's what the audiogram says and that's what you need to wear. And yeah, so that's really where I've sort of gone, okay, let's listen to the patient and give them another way of expressing what they want to say.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing that from you, it makes me realize how word oriented we are in clinical practice. It's kind of, often even when we're actively listening for verbal cues rather than necessarily actively listening for other messages. And you've chosen a very specific case of somebody for whom communication verbally may not have been their comfort zone. But I can think of actually a lot of people, older adults, who may be experiencing something similar. Perhaps people who just are not as comfortable in the verbal space, where actually being open and seeing how they want to communicate and what their preference is for communication can actually help us hear a lot more. So are there kind of techniques that you use now to help you when you're starting to build a relationship?
Definitely. I always ask what they want out of the appointment, which wasn't my approach before. What is it you want to get out of today's appointment? Where do you want to see the end of this, the end result? And I will always ask, do they want me to explain the audiogram rather than just throwing myself in? Obviously I work in paediatrics, so you're dealing a lot of the time with the patient's parents rather than the patient. And it will really depend on them. So it's knowing your audience. So depending on which site I'm at, depending on which parents coming, some of them that literally just want to know, yes, they can hear, or no, they can't, and what do we need to do next? But especially particular like scientific type or music parents are definitely like, I need to know every frequency and every detail, and that's fine, you can deliver that. But some parents, they look at you like, you're just losing me now. What do I need to do? How do I need to help my child? So I really approach it from the other end now. Like I kind of say, what do you need from this? We do a hearing test. Yes, he does have a hearing loss. What part of this do you need me to explain? Do you need me to explain where that hearing loss is? Do you need to know the audiogram? Where do we need to start? And so I've really involved them, sort of patient-centered, patient-focused approach. And I think I try and do that. And we share this in our team as well. So we have clinical supervision.
Yeah.
And so I shared this story regarding my autistic teenager. And everyone was like, oh, would never have thought to do that. And I was like, it's only because I'd been on that NDCS Healthy Minds course. That was in the back of my head. And I thought, we've tried everything else with this young girl. And parents are pulling her in two different directions. You must wear them, only wear them when you want to. So it was a case of actually, what do you want as the patient? Your ears, what do you want to do? What do you want to gain? And she wanted to be able to hear, but she really didn't like the hearing aids. So yeah, it was a case of slowly, let's build this up.
So really respecting her autonomy and her decision making in this process. And the other thing that you made me think was, in asking somebody what they expect, you're also helping to manage the limited time that you have available, because if you then spend 15 minutes, maybe not quite that long, but explaining an audiogram that maybe they've had explained to them a number of times previously, then you're failing to not only address their needs but also manage time appropriately. And I think that's particularly interesting, because a lot of people think that person-centered or patient-centered care is very time-consuming, but it can actually make things more efficient in some ways.
Definitely.